Okay, so now you've seen how we make these little cars. Now what do you do once you've ordered one that's a raw casting? Well, to get it ready to paint, there's a few areas that you've got to smooth out. And this first step I'm going to do isn't really necessary for everybody to do, but I'm going to do it just because it's going to make it a little bit easier to see on the video. But you just get a can of black primer. Hopefully it's a filler primer, but it can be the sealing primer. But any kind of primer that's a quick drying, can be a flat black paint. Just something to give just a quick little guide. It's called a guide coat. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow you to see the contrast between there. It doesn't take very much. You don't want to put a lot on there. Okay, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to try and work out those seams a little bit. Now what I do is I just have an old Bondo spreader that I've cut down into a little workable area. Got a piece of 150 sandpaper, 180, something like that. And I'm just going to sand over these areas just a little bit, just to try and show where the seam is. I think it's going to be easier to see once I sand it a little bit. To work across those areas. And now you can see that unevenness of the two materials. This side is actually a little higher than this side. Now you could take and try and grind this out, but it's been my experience that when you grind into this plastic, the plastic has a really nice shell on it, but once you cut through the shell and you get down into the thickness of the plastic, it's a little bit porous, and you might wind up with more troubles than you want. So my suggestion is to just really roughly, really quickly, just sand these areas that didn't get sanded, to abrade it a little bit. And then I prefer to just fill them as opposed to trying to sand them down and then just float over the two. So now that we've got that area prepped, I know another area that's going to be a challenge is going to be back up here. Because you guys seen where the mold splits at. It splits all the way almost to the top. And you're going to wind up with that little seam. It's important that you use this little Bondo spreader because it keeps the sandpaper flat against the surface, or else you'll wind up, because if you sand that with your finger, you'll get that all out of there, but it's going to wind up looking like you sanded it with your finger. Then I come around to the back, sand this. I can see that I don't know if you can see it, but that little line right there, the hood split, is a little bit off. There's not much that you can do about that here, but this area here and up in here, we can take and sand those areas a little bit. That's why I use my Bondo spreader, because it's got a nice sharp corner at the front where you can get down into these little detail edges. Those weren't off enough. I think I'm going to be able to just sand those out. Yeah, that looks good. And let's sand this area right here out. As you can see, we're sanding through the original primer that came on it and down into the plastic. And then I just sand this little area right in here where the grill is. Eventually I hope to have some little stickers made that will fit down into these areas that'll look like grill material, and maybe some exhaust coming out of there. But we'll sand those areas. These came out really nice. I think we can sand this out of just the plastic, or get it close enough that the filling primer that we put on at the end will finish it. And then this little seam right back here, we'll sand it out. This back is really turning out better than I'd hoped. Okay, and then underneath the bottom here is a pretty big seam area. That's pretty much not seamed, but we'll go ahead and sand that off. Get that ready. And then move it back up to the front. We've kind of got the same issues. We're going to have a seam right up in here that needs to be sanded. That one's pretty good size. Down in this area, you sand it, and then back in that flat area back there. That's going to be pretty hard to put Bondo in, so it's going to be easier to probably try and sand as much of that out as you can get sanded out. And then across the front. And now we're back up to where we started in the top. Okay, so now I've abraded all those areas to kind of show me where I'm at. I'll usually go over it and just kind of rough this whole area up with a medium sponge. These are 3M sanding sponges. They are a lifesaver as far as getting into little nooks and crannies and areas that are hard to sand, especially like door jambs in your full-size car. Just to clean this up so that we know we're going to have a good, make sure that our Bondo has something good to stick to. Now when I say Bondo, I'm not really going to use Bondo. What I use is, it's a polyester glazing putty. It's what you use after the Bondo. This one happens to be made by 3M. You know, it's a brand. I'm not saying this is the only brand to use. It's just what I happen to have. But what it is it's a very fine, very smooth Bondo. It's a lot thinner than Bondo. It's not made for filling up gaps like Bondo is. It's made for filling up scratches and little pinholes and things. But the thing that I like about it is, I'll take my sandpaper off my Bondo spreader. The thing I like about it is it spreads nice, it sands really nice, and it's fine enough where it'll grab into that primer without having to abrade it a lot, and you won't have separation problems. So you mix this up just like you do your Bondo. Be maybe a little bit conservative on your hardener because it does harden faster than Bondo does. Mix it up. Let's see if I can do this on the camera. Blow it off good and clean. I just spread a little layer right across this whole area. It doesn't take much. Try and feather out your edges because those are going to be hard to sand later. Spread another little layer right across here. Then we'll go back here on the window. Try not to fill up that gap, that seam hole there if you can, around the window lip, or you'll be trying to clean that out later, which is not a big deal, but if you can avoid it, it's great. And then back here on the deck lid, try to keep it out of the vent openings. Just fill across that gap. And then back here, this all looks pretty good. We want to fill up this area underneath the rear diffuser. And then come back up here. I'm going to run out of material, I think, but we'll just put a little layer right up inside of here. Fill that streak, and then down on the bottom one. You don't want to put any more in there than you have to, because remember, you're going to have to sand all that area. That's going to be a little bit of a tough area to sand. Under here looks good. So now we've put the glazing putty on just about every place that I think that needed it. And we'll just let that dry up for about half an hour maybe. And then we'll come back and I'll show you how to sand it.